See if we can see each other. Yes, what is there? Okay. Let's wait for Andy. So that would be your scribe sheet, isn't it? Yeah. Who's the volunteer now with Tianxin? Great, thanks. Just squeeze through. Okay. The sheet, yeah. Thank you. Okay. So the time is yours, yeah.
My research topic is child and play, and I've mentioned it at today's environment, and today environmental degradation and ill health are on rise in cities the world over, particularly damaging to children. And Arabs company, they have come up with some problems of that for urban childhoods is traffic and pollution, high-rise living and urban sprawl, crime, social fears and risk areas and inequality and unequal access to the city and isolation and intolerance, and as well as the
As you say,
slightly.
Our eyesight is not that good.
It could have been even a post stamp if you wish. The next time it could be like a.
you want to.
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. It would be very much appreciated. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It's even smaller.
I mentioned some.
So where is this from?
Arabs.
Arabs. Okay.
You always provide the reference.
Just say Arab, but it doesn't say.
As in the brief is indicated, the way that you need to provide, be very rigorous, guys, about providing references with the right nomenclature. Okay, you need to get familiarized with it.
Federico, do you have any press?
Okay.
You want me to?
I thought I was doing that. Thanks very much for watching.
Yeah, it starts now.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And I think children to play is really important, and one aspect is how to attract children to play outside, and another is when they play they can feel safe in a safe environment. So I think for the attract children to play outside, we should realize the importance of play. So I think, what does it mean to play? Richard Dentner is an architecture who focused on designing the playground, and he said that.
Who? Richard? Oh, that's this one here.
No, it's another person.
Right.
Than
Okay. So maybe give it, well, explain it if you wish, and then you can give it to us. Yeah.
And he said that play is essential to the social, emotional, cognitive, and physical well-being of children beginning in early childhood. And he think play is not the product, or we enjoy the process, or what we really desire to do. And I think the Friedrich Schiller also said the man only plays when he is a man in the full meanings of the word, and he is only completely a man when he plays, and he thinks play is the culture and the civilization of human. So why we can say that, and Jean-Pierre, he is more than any other writer. He viewed childhood play as a key element in human cognition and growth of intelligence. And he thinks the play can promote the intelligence. The play is a learning process of children. And he come up with the assimilation and accommodation are the two processes by which the child gradually develops his intelligence from primarily instinctual response of infancy to eventual achievement of adult logical thinking. And so I think play is really important.
I've read this already. You've seen literature reviews, I've seen that bit.
And then I think if I want to solve this problem, we should first to think the children's needs. And I divide it into three parts of their needs. One is the psychology, and I read some psychologists' article and theory about them. It's Jean Piaget, Erik Erikson, Montessori, and Van Eyck. And then another is the physiology, and I also read some professors' report. And the third is the safe environment, and I read Jane Jacobs and Oscar Newman and Jane Gales there about how to create a child-friendly setting. So, for the psychology part, I find that these psychologists, when they explore the children, they also want to divide the children into different ages, into 4 stages. I just explore children between the 0 to 12, and so I think I will develop divide it into 4 stages. One is I divided into 4 stages of the children, and then I have the four aspects of it. One is the challenge, 4 aspects of every stages. One is the challenges needed, and another second is visual spatial relationship to parents, and the third is proximity to home, and the fourth is the amount of the play space. For 0 to 2 years, and Montessori says that it is the stage that unconscious absent mind, and infants begin to observe the action and others and attempts to imit their activity, but it is just the instinctual activity. And Jean Piaget said at that stage, children usually want to do the practice play, and the characters of the practice play are repetition and pleasure in being the cause of external event. And at that stage, and Erik Erikson also said that parents should accompany them to explore and experience the environment, enable them to feel a sense of safe, because at this stage, children really need a sense of security. And for the 2 to 5 years, Montessori that the children is conscious of thought, and they create situations in his imagination through the use of symbols. It is the pretend play. At this stage, children really want to do some pretend play. Maybe they can make a stick and they can imagine it as a gun. And also, Oliver Sample demonstrated that at ages 3 and 5, children become more creative and capable for playing a variety of imaginative games. And for the visual spatial relationship to the parents, the children at this stage start to planning their own activities. Parents should give some space for their children initiatives. Thus, the environment may have a certain distance from their children, but not very far, because children at that stage, they are unaware of the hidden dangers. They should under the adult's surveillance. guidelines. As AP developed the supplementary planning guidance, they come up proximity to home and it divided into in the years, and it's like from 0 to 5 the proximity to home is 100 meters, because 1 to 5 children at this stage haven't been well developed both physically and mentally, so they are more dependent on their parents and tend to play near their home. So I think maybe the absence of the Oscar Newman, who put forward the concept of his defensible space, believes that the reason why crime rate happened in high-rise apartment is higher than that of walk-ups and terraced housing residents lose their identification and control of the public space. So I think if parents want their children from 0 to 5 to play near them, and they should have a sense to control their children's play space. And if they can control that, have a sense of control of that space, they can feel maybe more safety. And from 5 to 8 years old, Jean-Pierre decides this phase is one of transition between the world and fantasy and the world of reality. And we can notice that at this stage, peer district's professor shows that the normal course of neuromotor development is described from 5 to 8 years of age. So at this stage, children should do more exercise than before, because they can promote their intelligence by doing some physical exercise, which plays a key role in promoting neutral development. And from 8 to 12 years old, in these years, thought is progressively detached from perception and action. The children want to see, smell, touch for himself, and his curiosity can best be engaged and satisfied by first-hand experience. And Richard Dentner identifies that children will think their relationship with their surroundings through moving over and around or through something. And they also like some challenging game with some risk. So this is an adventure playground. At that stage, children, they usually want to come up with some rules for themselves, and they want to explore their relationships with their environment by themselves. And for the parents, and at this stage, children they try to follow others. Children's action, which can be regarded as a social behavior between purely personal and completely social behaviors, because it's a transition stages. But at this stage, the child enters into more complex social relationships. So children at this stage will be more independent, and they like being free from their parents and take part in many social activities. And that guideline says that the distance from their home is 100 and 400 meters. But I find that at this distance, maybe some of the parents can't see them. So I think at this stage, children want to explore more than the courtyard play space. They are curious about the world outside with an increasing desire of going out. So some architecture, landscape designer, they come up with some idea that that the design playgrounds completely separate from the residences, from the roads, as was the norm after World War, is instrumental to the child's development, because the design makes children move from an intensive adult monitor area to play space with lower surveillance or even without adult surveillance. But we shouldn't surrender to this. Children in urban areas require various space to play and learn. they need chances to take sorts of sports and experience to enhance physical skills. They need to specialize the outdoors place where they can play and stroll, and the pedestrian and sidewalks can fit meet these needs. This is my overall literature review, and I come up with some rules and then do some designs to think about these rules. Here's my set is really small. Remember that it is in Bristol.
Yeah.
It's a small block, and here is a shopping street.
Yeah.
And this is the residential area. And I do some tests, and I come up with the rules is equal opportunities for all children to play must be provided, and a great importance should be attached to identifying their needs and fully satisfying them with tailor-made play spaces. According to Genjic, children are concerned about playing at any time, so an isolated playground or some recreation facility can't meet the ideal children's needs. Space between both buildings and dwellings is a potential play space. And another rule is that a good play space should be equipped with various functions, so the needs of different children will be satisfied and they can play in this space in their own way. Therefore, it is important that when designing play spaces, designers should not choose devices of a traditional playground and thus determine what the children should do, but provide them with a variety of abstract game environments so that they can decide how they play and how they play with that.
Who's saying that? Is that something you've come up with, or is that something that someone you've read?
This is my come up with my rules.
Okay.
This is others.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And I do some little design. This is the section, and here is this is a building and the residential building, and this is the courtyard between the two buildings. And I did some and from here I did some staircase, and they can enter in every buildings, and the children can play under the staircase, and their parents also can see them, and they can move through it or over it, and they also can upstairs these small blocks and stay here and to see other children who have eye contact. And for this, this is the ground floor, and the children can move through these things. Only can children move through it, and children also can sit at the staircase, and their children can watch them. And from this one, it is a staircase, and but these things children can maybe from there to there they can, and also something. And this is the building, and for the this is for the distance is short, and for the long distance, here is a play area, and but it within the adult surveillance. Adults can watch their children what they play it, and this is the far distance, the terrace, the building, and the streets. Maybe children can't see their, maybe parents can't see their children play, but here, these residents can watch the children play here, and they can be the natural surveillance. and maybe sometimes we can close the streets for child's play.
One thing I would say, thank you very much. Sorry.
And my kids study is I want to do it in the Amsterdam, the Van Arts playground, and I want to do the observation about the qualities, skill of the space visual territory, and prepare roughly scaled plans and the sections of each space I want to observe. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I thought you'd finished. And you've had the 15, well, you went over the 15 minutes slightly. One thing I would say, just as a, I mean, I think, you know, the literature review is starting to, and I think the point I made when I emailed you yesterday was, how do you make sure that literature review translates itself into what the architecture might be? And I think, you know, you started to come up with some ideas about that. I think there's some issues. I mean, I think, you know, the fact that you started coming up with these sort of set of rules that you set yourself is really helpful, because then you can start sort of setting these out. What I think you've got an issue here, though, is how you've drawn this. It's all drawn in sort of very finalised sort of CAD renderings. And actually, what we're looking at this stage is some almost quite quick diagrammatic sketches that just show the important things. I mean, here you've got the same weight, same line weight for whatever this is, these things here that you put in, as for the building at the back. So you're looking at that, well, is this inside that building? Is it in front of it? Is it behind it? It's not clear. And I think these are an attempt to make the drawings look a bit more finished than they actually are. You need to be working to some extent with quite a sketchy, quick level at this stage, not this hard line, and get your line weights to show difference. But you know, so that's not necessary at this stage. But some of those sort of simple diagrammatic sketches might help it to become clearer to us about what you're trying to do in those areas. At the moment, it's quite difficult, particularly this, to read that drawing, because it's all the same line weight. You can't tell what one of the buildings at the back. And actually, you've not actually shown any children playing in there.
Yes, I just
Yeah.
others
Yes, I mean these. Yeah, but these things you can show. Yeah, I mean these are sort of, yeah, this sort of thing here. It's starting to come through. And, you know, even, you know, here you can draw a line just to show that, you know, their direction that they're able to watch, to show that there's observation. You can do observation so you can actually see it happen. These don't have to be finished drawings at this stage. They could be sketches, quick illustration. You know, I'd get yourself some sort of thick felt pens rather than trying to do it on CAD, and try and do it all, you know, a bit more by hand, and trying to put everything up as a CAD drawing, because I think it actually makes it much more difficult. We're not expecting you to put everything up that's been done through CAD at this stage, and I think it makes your life harder by trying to convert it into CAD first. You just get some big pens and just draw with big felt pens, and it's actually be quicker for you, and it makes more sense for us. I think that the way of organizing, and this is for everyone, the way of organizing your literature in a table, structuring the different ideas in regards to the ages of the kids, and classify it under the different topics, I think it's a very good idea. It's a very good one, and it makes our life far more easier in terms of understanding what your literature review is about and what your literature review does. That's what it does in terms of achieving somehow in regards to ideas, because it sounds that the two first rows are much more related to the psychological and emotional world of the kids, and the two others are getting back somehow to our urban environment and to the space, and in that respect,
but you are somehow making some links between some of the outcomes of the first two rows with the other two, which would be very important because obviously all the time is going to be much more about the two last rows rather than the first two ones. Of course, that it's very important to understand the psychological factors and the emotional factors, but always in regards to space, to urban environment, to the way that the kids are interacting with the spaces that then us as designers we can learn about and we can learn how to design much better, isn't it? So, I'm missing one column here, which would be a very interesting one, following your quote from Friedrich Schiller about man only plays when he's a man in the full meaning of the word, and he's only completely a man when he plays. So, how adults we can learn from kids about this, and this is something very important as parents, as we can rediscover the act of playing as something that is fundamental for everyone, not only for kids. Even at the philosophical level, about how to take at least part of life in a more playful manner, and how then we can consider our urban environment in a much more playful way. And those questions that my students are more familiar with about psychogeographic derives, it's a way of wandering and navigating in the city in an unconscious manner, which is kind of an urban game for adults about rediscovering the city from an emotional perspective, for example. And maybe if you are interested in that, my students could give you some information about that kind of psychogeographic aspect. But as well, there are other aspects about this way of understanding playing with the urban environment, which are very important. In that respect, I'm missing one reference that I gave you in our last review, that one of Johan Huizinga, Homo Ludens, which all that book was all about that, and it's a very classic reference for architects and urban designers because it's easily applied to space and to urban environment. So that reference probably still be an interesting one for you. So learning, even if your focus is in kids and in childhood, it would be super interesting to build up the relationship with adults. How we can basically learn from them about interacting with the urban environment in a more playful way. And then comes the what are you pointing to? Because what is unclear to me, it's the final research aim that you have. Because let's say if we go back to these diagrams that I drew for you, the broad topic of your research is very clear. It's about children playing in regards to the urban environment. Great, super interesting. But which is the aspect in regards to that you are pointing at, which are the part of that wider research topic that you are interested in? Again, if we go back to our previous presentation, in regards to addressing what? Because in that case, I think you have evolved from what you presented in the previous review, which was about that question of the vertical housing and how then to solve a very concrete problem that you got there about in regards to the isolation somehow of some of the children that are living in 20-story high buildings, whatever, and how they are not having a very clear and straightforward access to the street as if they were living in this kind of housing, which is very, very flexible. But if now, which is absolutely fine, you are moving towards that kind of typology, which is not these high-rise buildings, then what's the aspect? Which are the issues that you'd like to address with your research? The concrete issues. Is it the lack of quality of the urban environment, and how by considering the urban environment about being more playful, you could then rethink rethink ways of readdressing that quality of the urban environment. Is it about the journey that the kids could have from school back home, and then how by following that journey could be a playful journey, and then somehow I'm telling you that one because we got a very interesting summer dissertation in the Masters of Urban Design, which was specifically about that, and was a starting point for the urban regeneration of an entire district. Saying, okay, just by considering the journey from school back home, or from home to school as a playful journey, it could be a very interesting driving force for a first step in the overall urban regeneration of a district. So, but what has to be very clear is what are you pointing at in terms of what you would like to address in regards to a problem. Because for now, it's not that clear. It was clearer when you were talking about the isolation of the kids in high-rise buildings, and then we responded. Remember, in the panel, we responded saying, "Great, that's a very interesting one, but as well by doing so, you can not only address the problem of those particular kids, but as well the fragmentation of the city in different ways." And then we gave you that example of the playful journeys towards that high-rise flat where that kid was living, whatever. In that case, which is absolutely fine, as I said, it's absolutely fine now working and investigating in this medium density context. But what is unclear to me is what are you pursuing for your research. So maybe it's a matter of reflecting, of getting back to your literature review and getting back to the explorations that you are making. I agree completely with what Andy was saying about being more flexible, more sketchy, less cleaner, if you wish. But it's not that clear what are you exploring there, because it couldn't be about kids playing. Just that would be, in regards to my sketchy diagrams, it was the step one about the broader topic, and that's not a research aim. Research aim should address a concrete problem, isn't it? That's why I'm giving you the concrete problem that you attempted to address in your previous version. I'm not saying to get back to that one, and by no means. What I'm just saying is that was a good example of something very clear to address in terms of a problem which is unsolved so far, isn't it? It's unsolved about families that are living in high-rise buildings in these kind of objects that in your Asian context is far more problematic.
But we also talked about the differentiation of ages, and I'm not sure about 0 to 2, but 2 to 5. If you have that, there was that drawing you had in your previous one with the tower block with the space in the middle and then the long sort of bit moving out, which you've sort of got it here. These have just become shorter. And there's a question about, does that actually map onto that? So have you got your 2 to 5 year olds in here, but then your 5 to 8 are moving out, and then your 8 to 12s are a little bit further away. So I can see that's there. I think that's been sort of, I'm not quite sure, that's been the original idea that was more of a tower block.
No, that's absolutely fine. But then there would be another problem to address in that respect. But it's true, I totally agree that the ages could be somehow interacting much better with the different kinds of solutions that you are exploring.
And age maps onto distance to some extent, perhaps from the home. So 2 to 5, you're either in the home or you're actually with 0 to 2. I'm actually wondering if these numbers are done by Piaget, aren't they? Are these from Piaget's development stages?
Yes.
2 to 5. Well, 2 to 5 is preschool, isn't it? So it's these are the ones who are going to be racing around on little cars, and not playing together. they start to play together at this point.
Well, they are starting. According to my recent experience, they are just starting playing together there at that age.
But
it's true that they are just
it's but you know where you've got the 0 to 2, which are probably sat, half of them aren't walking. A lot of that age can't even walk, so you can just sit them on a crawl off somewhere, and so you need a sort of contained area, but nothing too big. This lot run everywhere, and they've got far too much energy, and you need to give them more space and things to climb up on, and then these ones are going to be thinking more, and then these are physical. So all of these sort of things are coming out of that. So what are the architectural things? Where do your 0 to 2 year olds, who will almost certainly be with their parents at that time? Their parents will be sat over there having a cup of coffee while their children are doing something over here, and they're just making sure that the children don't go off over and don't crawl off into the distance. So you're sort of probably that's going to be in here somewhere. But where is it that that social, and that's probably not just the children thing, but also you've got the parents into account here. Here you've got more space, you've probably got energy to burn off, so maybe you're moving, maybe that 0 to 2 is happening here, then the 2 to 5s start happening in here, and then the other age groups are, this is where they start school, so you can start with that journey. So you can see how it's making those map onto the different incidents within there. Now the high rise is whether it's
precisely from what Andy is saying, this is something that we pointed in the brief, and it's as well reflected in this feedback sheet. In the point 1, the last comment in point 1 here, which is extracted from the brief straight away, was about how your designs will be used as a research exploratory tool for the analysis of this literature review, which means how you can sketch out from those different ages how the kids from those different ages are interacting, as Andy is explaining, with the physical space in different ways. So that would be a way of exploring with your sketches, and therefore with your design, how they're interacting in different ways. So you should make the exercise of producing a set of sketches for each of those columns, and then starting imagining spaces that would fit for those different ages according to what you're learning from this literature. And now they could be, and then after doing so, you could start thinking on some overlapping spaces, so spaces that could be as well as good as for one age as for another, for example. But always translating all that into spaces that you would conceive by your imagination, informed imagination, because it's an imagination informed by your study, and through the action of drawing sketches, thinking about the spaces, and then getting back to your explorations there, because the first sketches could be just a straight away, like a spatial translation of all the things, all those ideas. And then a second set of drawings could be, okay, after having this spatial translation in first sketches, let's try to think how this would fit into my own current context. But as I say, that's precisely that part, how your designs will be used as a research exploratory tool for the analysis of this literature review. Understand? So that's a very good example for everyone about how to use the design right from the beginning, about basically it's about saying, okay, great, super interested in those ideas. Let's try to understand how would be the spatial translation through my sketches. Okay. And again, it goes towards what we said before, what we said about what are you pursuing? What is your specific research aim? That is something that you need to, probably you need to rethink.
I think one of the things you probably need to think about is this last column, this last row here. I mean, this is your conclusions, isn't it? From this is all from what other people have said, and this is what you've said. Is that correct?
No, it's also have some it's that same part.
Okay. So who's written these? Who writes this?
Jacobs.
This is all Jane Jacobs.
It's Jane Jacobs who writes that.
It's a supplementary planning guidelines.
Ah, right.
They conclude this
Right.
conclude.
Okay. Well, maybe you need another row down here, which sort of says, right, I've got all this. What does this mean? Well, actually, probably another 2 rows. So what does this mean in terms of the needs of the children? And then the next one is the sketches or the drawings. Almost could actually be, you could just take that section and stick that something there almost, and start to sort of draw onto it how the play might happen in a section or something similar to that. But you're in your next column, you're saying, right, what does this mean for what I provide for this particular age? And that might have to do with enclosure, somewhere to go. What you mustn't do in that is write things like adventure playground, soft play area. Don't do that sort of thing, because those are solutions that are already made. What you need to be able to say is, we need a confined space, good visibility for parents, tactility maybe, because they grab hold of things, move things, feel things, probably put things in their mouth if they can. What are the sort of things that you're going to have in that sort of space? What sort of things is it necessary to have in defining space that you might want for a 2 to 5 year old? What sort of thing? So you can define the space initially, perhaps in words, and then perhaps in drawings. So that would be 2 more rows on this, which would define those spaces over in terms of words, and then once you've got that, then you can start to say, right, okay, well, we can fit that. How do we fit that within that? The other thing, just to make things a little bit more complicated, is that particularly in these areas, parents are going to be looking after them. Parents have almost certainly got quite likely to have more than one child. One in this age and one in this age, and they've got to have them. There's going to be some degree of overlap, and if you provide something for a 0 to 2 year old, how will the 0 to 2 to 5 year old also respond to that same thing? So you might have Montessori. In Montessori schools, they just provide a big sort of pit with a series of blocks in, which the 5 to 8 year old will stack on top of each other and make some sort of den out of. The 2 year olds would probably just try and eat, and the 2 to 5 year olds would sort of try and just climb up on and roll off or something. So they will all use the same things in slightly different ways. So you may also have to just think about what happens at these boundaries, how different ages responding to the same thing that for the previous age or the next age. Does that sort of make sense?
And what about the relationship to the parents?
Well, it's the parents will be able to see them doing this. So you might have, parents, these are slightly further away, but they're also looking after. So you might have some child, the small children here, but they've got to be able to just see through there to make sure that the older children are not running off into this part of the world. So yeah, it's
and as well in that respect, I think you were asking as well the role of the adults in that, and to start with the role of the parents, the things that we are saying, because another thing is to think, and this is related to my previous comment about that column about the adults. The starting point about thinking in adults engaging with that question of playing it's the parents. How the parents are rediscovering the world through the eyes of their kids. A very personal example. Myself with Butte Park. I was always like every one of us running from one place to another, always super stressed, a stress professional from one place to another. And now becoming a parent, I need to stop and I need to play with my kid. I need to spend time with him, and therefore I need to rediscover. And this is absolutely mandatory. I need to rediscover the urban environment in a slower way and in a much more detailed way. So almost every morning, I'm bringing my kid to the nursery, which is there, and we cross Butte Park. And the things that we say and the things that I make him discover in Butte Park, it's all about the tiny bits and pieces, the animals, the birds, and it's all the river, the ducks, whatever. So those kind of things makes me perceiving Butte Park in a wonderful way, instead of having just a great park. It was always a great park, but just crossing very rapidly the park from the unit to my home and from home to the unit. Now I'm enjoying very much the park with him. So I'm not doing that just for him. He makes me enjoy the environment of a public space, the best one that we have in this city, which is Butte Park, in that detailed and slower way. Therefore, you could start thinking about the adults in such a way. As parents, that need to get engaged with the urban environment in a different way, and in a playful and even poetic way, if you wish. Because you need to rediscover how a piece of brick now becomes a car. Or which is absolutely fantastic. So instead of being just in a place where you feel that you feel yourself that you're in the middle of nowhere, then you are imagining many things with your kids, with very humble materials and leftovers that are there.
I remember seeing we did a thing with a whole load of kids, and we put all these activities on, and one of them a goal of a chocolate bar. And he decided that rather than doing what everyone else was doing, he was going to spend the whole of the time pretending the chocolate bar was a mobile phone and trying to make. I mean, they will use things, but not as you expect. But yeah, it's those things. So you can never provide stuff that the children will naturally do what you expect them to do. But it's providing those sort of little opportunities about what they are. But I think if you start to define what each of those years' needs are in terms of play, then you can start to sort of see how that might fit. I'm sort of with Federico's point about the tower, the high rise, because I think it actually adds a little bit more challenge into what you're trying to do. It makes it slightly trying to fit the idea of getting play into this high-rise building where it's actually sometimes quite difficult to get sociability going, I think adds a little bit more challenge. So I would be inclined to still keep that as high-rise on that in that bit, just to give you that little extra bit of making it a bit more difficult for you, but deliberately, because if it's more difficult, it actually means that you've got something that could be quite interesting when it comes out.
And as we said, if that's the case, it could be about addressing the lack of sociability in high-rise buildings, but as well, one problem that is still absolutely unsolved in our cities is how high-rise buildings are still objects in the city that are in complete or almost incomplete isolation. So the people that are living there are isolated. Therefore, by having these kind of playful journeys, you could address that isolation, not only for the kids, but as well for the families and for the adults that maybe are nice neighbors, but are single, they don't have kids. And by participating in something with the other families, whatever, they could socialize much better. And as well, at the level of the tower, in relation to the rest of its neighborhood, how by the fact of having these playground or playful journeys, your tower could be reconnected with the fabric, with the social fabric around. That's a clear research aim about addressing a tangible problem that is still unsolved in our high-rise building neighborhoods.
Because we've had Van Eyck building his parks outside and things like that, and there may still be some elements of that, and bit over there. But I think there is still, this is a really interesting question about how do you get sociability and play and children playing together in that space, within a high-rise building in the atrium or central core or something like that within a high-rise. So I think that's still worth pursuing along with using this information, which is really, very, 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 very good. I think you just need one more stage to say, well, this is what we need, and then you can start to apply that to that, and start testing it now in terms of those situations within the building.
The thing about your case study is that I think that you need to focus very much on the selection criteria of your case studies, because I'm not very sure that Aldo van Eyck and Amsterdam's playgrounds would be a good case study for you. To start with, it's not a current case study. It was an historical reference, wasn't it? So something that it was a project that was developed by the end of the Second World War and the beginning, the first half of the 50s. That's a classical historical reference for something that Dominic has used, which is about the reactivation of empty plots, empty voids, urban voids in the city. So all the people that we are thinking and we are revolving around reactivation of degraded urban voids in the city, the starting point is Aldo van Eyck with this kind of playgrounds. Whereas in your case, what you need to think about case studies is what the case study is offering you very specifically in terms of knowledge for what you are pursuing. So, Aldo van Eyck, also being something super interesting, it was much more what it's offering us as architects, as urban designers, it's a very innovative, creative, playful way of reactivating an urban void, rather than in itself the playing process of the kids. Right? So therefore, it could be, to me, it could be like an historical reference that, of course, you can use as an historical reference, but not as a full case study that you need to develop in depth. Normally, a case study is something that is happening nowadays that you can go out there to analyze, to interview people, to see the project, the users, so on and so forth.
It may be, though, that the case study doesn't have play at its centre, because we may not be able to find one because you're going for something unique, something new. That may not be there, but there may be a case study that looks at how people interact well within a high-rise, multi-story environment.
Paradigmatic example, the Unité d'Habitation in Marseille from Le Corbusier, which still works very well if we compare it with other examples that were the followers of that one, that were absolutely unsuccessful. The Unité d'Habitation of Le Corbusier in Marseille works very well because the community is very strong, basically. And the community, the neighbors community, they are very proud of being the inhabitants of that building, which is I think it's a UNESCO worldwide listed monument now. So they are feeling themselves super proud of being the inhabitants, their residents of a worldwide listed UNESCO almost a monument, and they understand that the most important factor of how we are considering that a fantastic paradigmatic example in architecture is precisely the way that the people are interacting and the way that the people are doing activities there in those fantastic spaces. But if there wouldn't be that strong community developing those activities, even if Le Corbusier has designed those spaces, there would be dead spaces. But they are still working very well because that community is keeping that intensity of life, of exchanges, of all sorts of things. So that could be, I'm just suggesting.
Other ones might be, Park Hill, Sheffield, might be. That's an interesting one because it had probably similar sort of intention to the Unité d'Habitation, but it then didn't work. But so they've now refurbished it and redone it through Urban Splash. And you know, how is that now? Have they taken away the social side of it as a result of that? So I think it's you're almost I suppose what the question in terms of case studies is looking at. Are you actually looking at case studies perhaps of multi-story? I'm not saying high-rise in this case because I think that limits it, but multi-story living and ensuring a sort of a communal, you know, where the, you know, people are, how people interact between the different houses and different units, and then you then can take that and say, right, this is how everybody talks, but how can we specifically extend that to think about play? So Corbusier probably didn't really think very much about play when he was designing the Unité d'Habitation. So how could you extend that? But he thought about the social interactions, but didn't really think about children playing as part of that. So essentially what you're doing is then saying, right, this is the sort of thing that they did. Let's extend this to see how it works with children. Does that make sense? So your case study isn't necessarily about just an example of good practice of where somebody's done something that involves children playing. It's actually about a building type of how, you know, of something else, but you're extending it then to think about how children might be taken into account to a greater extent within that space.
That's why it's going to be much clearer for you just making the decision about what would be your research aim. If you agree that your research aim could be about addressing those things that we pointed at, then you would be far more specific about what you are pursuing, isn't it? By doing so, you could start thinking, okay, let's think in cases of best practices or bad practices that are offering me some ideas, some design strategies that work well or were failures in that respect. Maybe not in all the things as we are saying, in all the things that you are pursuing, but in sociability. One could be about sociability in internal spaces, and another could be about playful activities. How could you, for example, explore how us as adults we can get engaged with the urban environment, and in that respect, it could be something even about a case study in outdoor spaces, in public spaces. How we can engage with the urban environment in a playful manner, and there are hundreds of examples of that. For example, let's say that the anthology from Jeremy Teal, Spatial Agency, offers you many different practices that are engaged with temporary tactical actions in the urban realm, and some of them are related to playing or to a playful way of getting engaged with the reality and not only from a functional manner. So that could be a start from that perspective. But what has to be, it has to be very clear what you would like to get from each of your case studies in regards to what you are exploring. Okay. What is important for now in our comments is to understand which are the elements that you need to follow, which are the parts that you need to focus on, which is, for example, the research aim, and then the methodology, isn't it? The methodology about understanding how a case study should play a very specific role in the way of getting knowledge from that case study for informing your research. In that respect, see, again, that's why I shared the feedback sheet with you guys, because like that you have all the different things that you need to think about. Of course, this is not about ticking boxes at all. It's about understanding why a case study is important for what. Isn't it? So don't take all those different sections as separate sections or as short exercises at all. It's about understanding what a case study is about. and how I need to get prepared before getting out to my case study. I need to get prepared about thinking how I'm going to analyze my case study, which kind of instruments and how I'm going to implement those instruments there. When I'm saying instruments, it's tools such as mapping, sketching, video recording, interviewing the people. It's all about yourselves. You don't have to use all the instruments. It's just the methods that you need to use to get the right data that you are interested in. That's why you need, beforehand, you need to understand what would be the aspects that your case study would offer you for your research. Is it clear? I think that your mates are registering all the things, and then you will have our recording. I would advise you to revise the recording and as well the notes, and of course the feedbacks in that respect. Perfect. Any final questions? Is that all right? Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you. Okay, so let's go to the final one. Let's move to the TV7. Who would like to volunteer, take notes for your